So, I wanted to talk about the difference between fear and intuition because these are both two experiences that we have which often guide the choices that we make in life, and they can be very difficult to distinguish from each other. A lot of times, maybe our intuition guides us away from something, and we might think that's fear, or we feel fear and we think it's our gut, and so we think it's intuition, so we make decisions based on fear. Maybe it's not the best idea. So, first of all, here's the thing about fear and intuition. They're both rooted in the gut. So they both have they can have a very similar physical embodiment. But the difference is that, so first of all, what is intuition? We talked about it, I discussed it a little bit the other day, but it's really sort of this knowing that you have that's not on a rational level. It's not a purely rational level. But it's not an irrational level. It's more of a subconscious thing. So rather than saying intuition has nothing to do with the mind, I think that intuition is really something that takes in more components than our mind can deal with. Our minds are pretty limited. So our intuition takes into account like the past, the present, and our personal needs all simultaneously. Our personal, who we are, what's right for us. It's kind of taking a snapshot of all these different things at once and working in a subconscious way. So anyways, what does it have to do with fear? So fear and intuition, again, can both be experienced as this sort of gut instinct, and that can be confusing. But what's important to keep in mind is that fear is very emotionally charged. Fear feels like anxiety, it might feel like darkness, it might feel like emptiness, it might feel just scary and like something we really want to avoid. Whereas intuition is normally unemotionally charged. It comes to us just like this clear knowing, this feeling that, wow, this is right or this isn't right. It's even if it's about something that we shouldn't do or should stay away from, it doesn't often have this emotional charge to it that fear does. So that's one way to identify what's fear and what's intuition. Another thing is intuition's just about the present moment. So fear is often based in the past or the future. We might be afraid of, something repeating like it did in the past, so we're connected to this old trauma, or we might be having anxiety about the future and what's going to come from something. So our fears are mental stories about something that's not in the present, whereas intuition happens here and now. We're basing our feeling based on just what we're experiencing now. So keep in mind that if you're experiencing fear, it's important to make a relationship with fear because fear often is the barrier between us and doing something that's really actually good for us, like taking a risk, getting out of our comfort zone, taking on a new challenge. These are all things that fear will prevent us from doing because it wants to keep us safe. I think I said this in the first video. Our brains want to keep us safe and they don't want us to get out of our zone of what we know. We're safe. We're not getting eaten by a predator. We're not blah, 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 whatever. So if you're experiencing fear that's based on the past or the future or having all this emotional charge around it, examine that and start to make friends with that because that is often something that you can break through into a new level of life. Whereas if your intuition is speaking to you in a more rational, ironically rational, right? But if it's speaking to you in just a more grounded way, just this knowing you have without a lot of trauma and darkness around it, that might be something to listen to. One way you can start to just become familiar with the feeling of, what's a fear, what's an intuition, you can actually just sit down and make a list of all your fears. Just make a list of everything in the world that freaks you out, everything you've been afraid of before, everything that kind of elicits that emotional charge in you, and just become familiar with that. So then when you go through life, you'll start to notice, oh, is this situation bringing up fear? This has something to do with something from my list. It might be more of a fear than an intuition. So short story is, if something's a fear, try to understand it more and befriend it because it might be blocking you from something that's actually good for you. Whereas if your intuition is warning you about something, that could be something that's something that is, maybe better to listen to. Curious what your thoughts are on this. Have you noticed in yourself any differences between your fear and your intuition? And have you listened to either? What happens when you follow them both? Just interested to hear what your thoughts are on this. So go forward, make friends with your fear, and, hopefully this gives you some tools to connect even more deeply with your own intuition as well. Bye from Bali.